Okay, so I have been working on a series. It is the winter time here, so the landscape is pretty stark. And so I decided to do a series with neutrals. So there's some very dark grays, some light grays, some cream, off-white. These are all a lot of vintage linens, hand-dyed fabrics, hand-dyed vintage linens, and some of the vintage linens are in their original state, so that's the color that they were. So this is a quilt that I have in process. And within the quilt, because I was using a neutral theme, I decided to use some old book pages to stay with the sort of black and white stark color palette. So I want to show you how I prepare paper in order to quilt it, because you can just quilt it and add it to your work, but it has a higher incidence of tearing. So what I do is, and again, this is from a very old book. It's some poetry book. I'm not really sure, like a collection of poems. So I took out a page from the book, just tore it right out, and now I'm cutting a piece of Misty Fuse. Now, there are other fusible webs on the market, and I have tried several of them, and I prefer Misty Fuse. It's the lightest. I don't know if you can see the name in there, Misty Fuse. But this was a 12-inch by 100-foot roll. Oh, I'm sorry, 100 yards. So this was super thick at one time. I've been using it over time. So I believe in buying in bulk and only having to do it every now and again. So here I've got the book page, and I have a piece of cotton muslin. Again, something I buy by the bolt, so I don't have to buy it often. I put my cotton muslin, I put my Misty Fuse right here. They're both about the same. Sometimes one side is just more interesting than the other. And then I put my book page on top. I put it inside a piece of parchment paper, because any of you who have used fusible web, you know it's just a type of glue, a type of adhesive, and it can gunk up your iron, it can gunk up your ironing board, your ironing surface. So, we want to protect that, not have to clean it. And then I just very slowly, I press it. Right? Ironing is when you move the iron back and forth. Pressing is when you hold it in place. I don't have to give much weight to this because the Misty Fuse is so light. And then when I take it off, it's ready to go. It's as simple as that. And then when whatever I want to use, I just cut it, and then I stitch it, put another piece of fabric on top, stitch it. And when I iron, I always iron the fabric so that the paper itself never gets creased. The fabric all gets ironed away from it when you're piecing it. So, for example, in this one, this gray fabric got pressed in this orientation. This got pressed here. This got pressed here. This got pressed here. And you can't see the back because I've already got backing on there. But if you could, you would see 1/4 inch all the way around is just the paper lying flat. Creasing it is a little harder than creasing fabric, and it's also going to break some of the fibers in the paper. So you don't want to do that. And when I quilt it, you can quilt it fairly densely, but if you go too much, you're just going to rip the fibers because they're not as long as textile fibers. That's my tips for using paper in an art quilt, and I hope you found something useful in there. Again, it could be any paper. Soft book pages work better. Things like cardstock, they're a little trickier. Okay, thanks. And if you want